In the first episode of the International Volleyball Academy, we learned the basics of overhead set. Now it's time to learn how to catch the ball correctly.
As part of the methodical procedure, we continue to focus on the overhead set technique as presented by one of the players in the U16 category. After the previous pushing into the ball against the resistance, the catching phase follows.
Of course, catching the ball in the correct hand position. We start after the throw. After a successful catch, we move on to throwing the ball, first over ourselves and then after a throw from a teammate. The principles from the first episode still apply. Wrists curled back, thumbs down in opposition to the other fingers. Index fingers and thumbs form a triangle, pinky edge of palm tilts from vertical to horizontal.
I hope you remember this from the first episode, a tool that helps children imagine movement and then automate it. It's never without its problems.
Here at 9 years old, the ball is not caught over the head but in front of it. And now the two-finger exercise, where we focus mainly on the flexible movement of the thumb and index finger. Always keep in mind that the thumb and index finger are key players for proper hitting. This does not quite happen here yet, as the thumb does not push down when in contact with the ball, and together with the index finger does not provide a suitable bed for the ball. The ball is still dancing a bit in the fingers. This will, of course, soon be eliminated.
In the following exercise, we are very close to volleyball technique. And again, we can use the balls for volleyball and basketball. The advantage of using the basketball is that its weight squeezes the children's thumbs down. That's what we want.
The basketball is mainly used in training setters, but here it is useful for stimulating neuromuscular coordination, as well as for developing dynamic strength in the forearms, wrists, and fingers. And while you've got a basketball in your hands, try throwing it behind your head too. We're gonna need an overhead set soon.
In the past, there have been critical voices that we teach children to throw. Yes, kids start by throwing, which in practice and in play manifests as pulling, but contact with the ball gradually shortens as they gain strength and their hands get bigger. It's all about ball control, as we see with the Turkish setter.
But before we get to more advanced exercises like these, there is one more basic element to master: movement under the ball, which involves movement and footwork in general. And to help us do that, we'll introduce the various games we'll be looking at in a moment. As we said in the last episode, play brings joy, but it also develops footwork. Part of the motor development for volleyball is not only hand coordination, but also foot coordination. Sometimes we will use the technical term locomotion.
In the case of setting, simply effective movement under the ball. Not for nothing did our teachers say, volleyball is all about the legs.
So what are we going to learn this time? We will divide the analysis of footwork into two topics. The first is active feet, the second is smart feet. Active legs is about stimulating the neuromuscular system of the legs through various activities such as athletics, gymnastics, or dance, which help children to realize that they have legs at all and need to use them actively. Just a kind of movement literacy of the feet. Smart feet is a term referring to the strategic use of the feet, that is, moving to the right place at the right time.
This aspect is essential for effective performance in the fast-paced environment of a match, and manifests itself in the ability to not only initiate and accelerate movement, but also to adequately decelerate or stop, such as in this example from the Women's League. All of these exercises develop these skills.
The exercises, which we have aptly named the header, require fairly intense micro-movements of the legs in a small space. In volleyball, most things happen in micro-movements.
It's logical. With the speed of the flying ball, there is often no time for big moves. With young children, we make sure from the beginning that they get to the setting spot quickly, but at the same time, that they consistently stop the movement of their feet.
The correct setting spot is where the player stops and has the ball falling directly on top of his head.
Similar to this example, after the setter runs to the spot where the ball is supposed to arrive, he takes only miniature steps of 1 meter to fine-tune the final spot where he can hit the ball completely calmly. These are really just micro movements, but very important.
To be precise, when moving over a longer distance, the player starts with long, fast steps and softens them into micro movements just before stopping. In the following exercises, we already combine locomotion with setting, which is the topic of the next episode.
Of course, the key to the development of locomotion in children are games. For example, Red Mini Volleyball. Red Mini Volleyball is a competition for pairs up to 10 years of age on a 4.5x 9-meter pitch, where no bump pass is allowed, and instead one set to yourself is permitted.
Red Mini Volleyball was created and is played just for the purpose of natural movement under the ball, plus it's great fun.
Now let's just say that the games where you're not allowed to bump work great. They naturally lead the player to move under the ball. There is no better recipe for developing locomotion than no bump volleyball. Plus, the boys really like these games. Incidentally, modifications of bumpless preparatory games are also popularly played in higher categories.
Here we see one of them performed by 13-year-old girls, but we're gradually making the game harder. In this demonstration, we steal time from the players by adding a movement action that they have to perform before the ball comes back from their opponent. Of course, they have to play 3 mandatory touches. It's just about competing. If you want to fret, please feel free to invent ingenious drills, but our recommendation is to rely on bumpless mini volleyball or similar games. These will naturally solve the problem for you.
Usually, no child wants to lose voluntarily, and all these games will naturally force him to move under the ball even without the coach's appeal. Yes, and they still go full on emotional, and that's what we want.
Final recap of key points. The praying, 2-finger, and thumbstick are all great helpers for proper setting. Starting with catching and proper throwing, we get to setting. The contact time with the ball must be gradually reduced. In training, we use a basketball that presses down with more thumb weight. The child needs both active feet as part of motor literacy and smart feet as a strategic element of the game. Movement to the ball over a longer distance starts with long, fast steps. Before the setting point, the steps shorten to micro-movements. Red Mini Volleyball and Preparatory games, where no bump is allowed, are the best way to develop proper movement under the ball. The game will solve your feet for you.
Great job! You already know how to get under the ball and set the ball. In the next episode, we'll cover the basics of bump pass.